This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. Not so fast, people out there that are claiming that Donald Trump just got a significant win because he's not going to be sentenced by Judge Merchan in New York for the 34 felony counts on the 18th of September because Judge Merchan has decided to delay that until 2 days before Thanksgiving. That's a win for Donald Trump. No, it's not. It's not at all. Let me unpack the many reasons why this is a terrible result for Donald Trump, and he's got to be pissed because it's not going to get him what he wants, which is to somehow get to the Supreme Court before the election and absolve his name. Not happening, because Judge Merchan didn't just postpone the decision on the sentencing. Judge Merchan also postponed the decision about whether Donald Trump had any immunity defense coming out of the U.S. Supreme Court decision on July 1st. Trump versus the U.S. So what Trump really wanted, he didn't want that delayed. He wanted the judge to make that decision so that Trump could take an appeal at the state court level at least, and then to the federal court level to the United States Supreme Court. But Judge Merchan said, I'm not ruling on that. And Trump's like, that's not the one I didn't want you to rule on. The one I didn't want you to do anything about was sentencing. And Merchan effectively said, I'm not sentencing you either. I'm going to sentence you 2 days before Thanksgiving. That's going to be a Norman Rockwell painting of a Thanksgiving dinner at the Trump household. You can picture it now. 2 days before Daddy Trump is going to be sentenced. And I'm telling you, this signals to me that Trump is going to be sentenced to incarceration in jail by Judge Merchan. Judge Merchan said, look, you can see it, and I'm going to read to you from his order. You can see it in his analysis. He's basically saying, the Manhattan DA is telling me they don't care effectively when I sentence him. I mean, words to that effect. They took a agnostic or no position with the judge, leaving it to the judge. The judge says, look, I got the immunity decision. I'm not going to rule on that. I've got sentencing. We're 41 days or so to an election. If I had sentenced him back in July, when his original sentencing date was, we wouldn't be in this pickle. But now I'm going to be sentencing him sort of close to the election. And I don't need to do that. So I'm going to move this until the 26th. That means there's an overhang or a shadow, right? Judge Merchan just shaded Donald Trump because he's going to leave this indelible scarlet C for convict on Donald Trump all the way through the election. And he's got no way around it. He can't run out to the appellate court. There's no sentence to appeal. He can try to appeal the underlying merits of the conviction, but that's a dead bang loser. And he really can't do it. He'll try an interlocutory appeal, what's called an appeal before the final appeal. But I don't think he's going to get any traction on that by either the state appellate courts. There's 2 levels of those, or even the federal court, which right now is struggling to decide whether Donald Trump should be knocking on the federal courthouse door at all. So this was masterstroke, a masterstroke by Judge Merchan. I'm not sentencing you until after the election. Therefore, I can't be attacked for pre-election interference, but I'm going to sentence you before the inauguration. Meaning if Donald Trump was planning another Jan 6th, he's going to have a hard time doing it this time from behind bars. I think he's getting a jail time from Merchan, and Merchan knows it. Knowing that he's going to give him jail time, rather than give him the jail time and suspend it and allow him to take an appeal, which he would have done, he says, I'll just get past the election. Who cares over 20 days? Everybody knows he's been convicted. But the masterstroke is he's also decided to adjourn or delay his decision on whether any aspect of the U.S. Supreme Court's decision on immunity maps onto the trial and somehow disturbs the jury verdict 12-0 against Donald Trump. Yes or no? Without him deciding that, there's nothing to appeal. So this isn't a significant win for Donald Trump. Only if on the thin veneer, if you don't understand, a more complicated analysis of state and federal court and practice. So he's got a conviction he can't address directly in an appeal. He's got a sentencing he certainly can't address directly in an appeal. And then he's got an immunity issue that the judge is going to sit on. Like a hen on top of an egg. He's just going to sit on until sometime later in November, which he can't appeal. So this was a masterstroke. The other issue that I want to make clear for those that are sort of joining this analysis late or joining Legal AF late is that there's no immunity here. Even if Donald Trump were somehow to pull out at this point a Hail Mary victory and win and get restored to the presidency, There's not a darn thing he can do about a state conviction. He can't pardon himself for state convictions. While the pardon power is broad, robust, almost the most powerful superpower that a president has is the power to pardon. It can't be challenged. You can't sue over it. You can't sue to get one. You can't sue if somebody else got one. It's his unlimited, unfettered, constitutional core, absolute immunity from being sued or prosecuted, pardon power. But he can't pardon himself for state convictions. So that's out. That's why they're desperately trying to drag the case over to federal court for some sort of federal immunity argument or federal pardon argument. So he can't pardon himself. He's not going to get a pardon in New York State from what has always been the bluest of blue Democratic states and governors like Governor Hochul. Not happening. And he knows that. And if everything goes about according to plan, the way we think it's going to on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF, Kamala Harris is going to be sworn in as Madam President on January 20th at noon. And Donald Trump is going to be sentenced on the 26th of November by Judge Merchan to some prison time, and there's not a darn thing that he can do about it. Even Kamala Harris couldn't pardon him for state law crimes. Even like when Ford pardoned Nixon for the good of the country and to unify the country, that was over federal crimes. You can't pardon him over state crimes. So that's what's going to happen. This was not a significant win for Donald Trump. Let me read to you from the order on September 6th in a letter. We do a lot of letters in New York. I've talked about this before in my New York practice. Lawyers write letters to the judge. Judge writes letters to the lawyers. And it all gets posted on the docket. Most jurisdictions do it by way of filings, memorandum of law, motions. You don't write letters to the judge, and the judge issues orders. But here we do orders by way of letter, sometimes emails. That's how New York rolls. Here's the letter. It's addressed to the lawyers for Donald Trump, Todd Blanche, and the main lawyer for the Manhattan DA's office, Matt Colangelo. And it says, "Dear counsel, by letter dated August 14th, defendant requests an adjournment of his sentencing, currently scheduled for September 18th, until after the 2024 presidential election. He argues that he needs the time to adequately assess and pursue appellate options in the event this court denies his motion under Section 330 of the Criminal Procedure Law." We call it the CPL. That's the immunity motion. Donald Trump is trying to get his judgment of conviction vacated by the judge because he thinks the immunity decision changed everything, which it really didn't. But he says, well, all right, I got a 330 motion to dismiss and vacate the judgment against you, the verdict against you. I understand that. And you're asking me to adjourn. And then I look over at the people, the state of New York, and they're telling me they're not taking a position. So what's a person to do? So the judge also commented on page 2 about, I could have sentenced Donald Trump on the 11th of July. He said, notably, had defendants been sentenced on July 11th, which was originally scheduled, there would, of course, been no cause for delay. However, on July 1st, the Supreme Court of the United States, Judge Merchan mentions, rendered a historic and intervening decision in Trump versus U.S. That's the immunity decision. Relying on that decision, Trump immediately sought leave of this court to file a motion to seek to set aside the verdict and to dismiss the indictment. And in light of the Supreme Court's decision, which this court must interpret and apply as appropriate, this court granted defendant leave to file the motion. They filed the motion, then the judge set up the briefing schedule. The judge goes on to say at the bottom of page 2, were this court to decide after careful consideration of the Supreme Court's decision in Trump that this case should proceed, that's the decision that he was going to make on the 16th, that now he's going to delay that as well. It will be faced with one of the most critical and difficult decisions a trial judge faces, the sentencing of a defendant found guilty of crimes by a unanimous jury of his peers. Look how he framed that. He didn't say that is the most critical and difficult decision a trial judge makes because he's got a former president running for president in front of him. It's because he's got the sentencing of a defendant found guilty already unanimously by a jury. Again, just like Judge Chutkan in the D.C. election interference case said during her oral argument hearing yesterday, I don't want to hear about he's running for president or that he was the president of the United States. All he is for me is a defendant in a criminal case where he's facing 4 felony counts against him. Same thing here with Judge Merchan. I got to that sentence thinking, oh, he's going to mention the presidency thing. No, he just said you're a run-of-the-mill garden variety defendant who's already been convicted unanimously by a jury of your peers. The judge continues on page 3. He says, he then posits a world. He envisions a world where he rules against Donald Trump on the immunity and goes forward with sentencing. Hint, hint. He says, if defendant's 330 motion is denied, meaning I deny Trump's attempt to use immunity to get out from under his convictions, the law requires the imposition of sentence following a guilty verdict without unreasonable delay. See how he ties those two things together? The judge says, I'm under the gun to sentence Trump without, unreasonable delay once I decide the immunity decision. So I'm not even going to start that clock. I'm going to take the pressure off everybody. I'm not going to decide the immunity decision. I'm going to be a hen sitting on an egg, and I'm not going to sentence him either. So I don't have that undue unreasonable time period running against me. For Donald Trump, as I said at the top of the hot take, it's terrible. It means he can't appeal. He can't take an appeal. He's a convict. He's got no appeal on the immunity issue because the judge ain't ruled on it yet. All right. Continuing that, the judge says at the bottom of page 3, which is the heart of the decision, unfortunately, we are now at a place in time that is fraught with complexities, rendering the requirements of sentencing hearing, should one be necessary, difficult to execute. Editor's note, he's getting sentenced on the 26th of November, and it'll likely have prison time attached to it. Thus, in accordance with certain of the grounds submitted by Trump, the defendant, and the reasons for adjournment provided by the people, coupled with the unique time frame this matter currently finds itself in, the decision on the 330 motion, which is the immunity motion, and the imposition of sentence, so he puts the two together, conjoins them, will be adjourned to avoid an appearance, however unwarranted, the judge says, that the proceeding has been affected by or seeks to affect the approaching presidential election in which the defendant is a candidate. This court is a fair, impartial, and apolitical institution, the judge writes. Adjourning decision on the motion and sentencing, if such is required, should dispel any suggestion that the court will have issued any decision or imposed sentence, either to give an advantage to or to create a disadvantage for any political party and or any candidate for any office. Adjournments for sentencing are routinely granted. Therefore, the judge says, I don't take this decision lightly, but it's one that I think is in the best interest of justice. And then he orders the two things that I said are the masterstroke. I'm not going to rule on the immunity decision motion that you asked me to, Trump, and I'm not going to sentence you. And I'll see everybody. On in November, on November 26th. As to the motion, and then I think this is also important and indicates sentencing is coming and jail time is coming. Trump also made a motion to preclude the people, which is the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, from filing their pre-sentence memorandum, meaning the judge needs to have two inputs, generally 3 inputs, before he sentences somebody. He's got the input of the defense counsel, who prepares a pre-sentence memorandum. You know, they'll say he doesn't deserve any jail time whatsoever. Instead, he should get a parade down Fifth Avenue. Then you've got the Manhattan DA's office, who's going to come in with, send him away for several years, Your Honor, and here's 32 cases on similar facts and similar convictions of people committing similar fraud under New York law, and he should go to jail for that amount of time. And then you've got the parole or probation department in New York that sort of does their independent analysis. It gets submitted to the judge. One day it will be unsealed and everybody in the public. Right now it's sealed. And so the judge said, I'm not going to stop the DA from preparing their sentencing memo. Hint, hint, you should do yours too. That's the read between the lines, Trump. You should also do a sentencing memo, but they should file it, and they'll file it under seal, meaning the prying eyes of the public and legal AF won't be able to see it until after I've sentenced. And that's how he sort of balances that act too. Powerful order, 4 pages. It's what we come to expect from Judge Merchan. Efficient, yet powerful, yet apolitical, judicious, and all of that. But that's the upside. This will go down in history as not being a win or a good day for Donald Trump, no matter how much Stephen Chung and his campaign and others around him and Donald Trump at his own debate spin it. Now, what I want to see, speaking of the debate before I end the hot take, is how former prosecutor, former attorney general, the prosecutor versus the felon, how Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, handles this matter. and turns on it and hoists Donald Trump on his own petard during the debate. This was just a gift. In my take as an advocate, as somebody who is looking for gifts from the other side wherever I can take it, if Kamala Harris doesn't jump all over this and drive it down Donald Trump's throat, you're a convicted felon. No judge, no appellate court, no federal court is going to say otherwise. And the American people have to make their decision on you're a 34-count convicted felon. The only question left, the only thing left is the shouting, is the sentencing on the 26th of November. Happy Thanksgiving, Donald. Mic drop. End of debate. She's got to jump all over this and spin the facts in her direction. We'll follow it on MeidasTouch and on the Legal AF podcast. There it is. We sit, can everybody see that? We can sit at the intersection of law and politics so you don't have to. I got to get it above the lower third, as they say. We curate a podcast, Legal AF. 3 or 4 stories at the crossroads of law and politics. We bring it to you as practicing lawyers in the courts that we follow, and we give you our analysis. It's educated. It's professional. Sometimes we're wrong. We're generally right. And at least we're entertaining here on the MeidasTouch Network. And then you can pick us up on audio podcast platforms of your choice. Just plug in Legal AF. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, don't ask for whom the alarm tolls. It tolls for thee. This is Michael Popak reporting. Heary, heary. Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know, and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.